let's talk more about RBL Bank, because this is the biggest news and news development, not just because of a huge infusion of capital of $3 billion, but also remember a foreign holding into an Indian bank and a majority stake of this scale and size. We are talking about Emirates NBD taking a majority stake in RBL Bank, and that fundraise which has been announced. We know the contours of the deal. Open offer is something to watch out for. What we are getting now is a discussion from Gopal Jain, who's the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer at Gaja Capital. Gopal, it's always a pleasure speaking to you. And of course, Gaja Capital holds a little over 2% stake in RBL Bank. You've had a long history with RBL Bank, with two sets of investments in different phases and different journey and lifeline of this particular bank. So first of all, my big question to you as a nominee on the board of RBL Bank, you have been from Gaja Capital by way of your minority investment. Now, as an investor, while open offer kicks in because of this large transaction, which side of the open offer are you in? Would you still stay committed with this investment, or are you going to subscribe to the open offer, Gopal?
Again, thank you so much for reminding our viewers that I'm here in my capacity as a member of Gaja Capital. I'm not representing the bank.
Yes.
I think it's very important to bring in balance and moderation. This transaction will take some time to consummate, right? So, because this is going to require many regulatory approvals. So for the open offer to happen, there'll be some time. And finally, any move of this sort, it takes some time to show effect. Having said that, we have been an investor, as you mentioned, in this bank since 2010. And I'm afraid I can't speak about, the bank is a listed bank, Nisha, and there's a lot of volume. So it's not as if the open offer offers any special window of liquidity. The window of liquidity already exists.
That's right. In fact, Gopal, when we talk about this large transaction, as an investor, how do you view this particular deal, and what is the potential going forward with this transaction for RBL Bank?
Again, I will remind our viewers, because it's a listed bank, there is a public market,
yes,
not to get ahead of ourselves. First of all, there is an approval process. It's going to be a very elaborate approval process. Secondly, especially in banks, no matter how significant the transformation, it takes time for the results to arrive. Having said that, coming to your question, this announcement of a transaction today is in itself a very positive signal for both the Indian banking sector and the Indian economy. And why? Because the banking sector is highly correlated to the performance of the economy. Financialization is one of our strongest visible trends, and in some ways signals global confidence in both the economy and the banking sector at a time when we need it.
Capital infusion, and at this time having such a large investor coming in, and it also in a lot of ways, Gopal, is coming in as a first for the banking industry, and that's also having its rub-off effect on the banking sector on the whole, the way the market is reacting to this particular transaction. But you've been with this particular bank since 2010, when Gaja Capital had first invested in RBL Bank, exited in 2018, and in 2020, again, there was an investment. I particularly remember that particular time because the bank needed some confidence fund also. And then in the second phase, when you entered on the board as a nominee from the investor, there were corporate governance aspects also there. All put together, revival of the bank, confidence money, confidence at the board, corporate governance, all of them have been building blocks leading to a big transaction. How has the journey been, and how is the corporate governance standard now?
Full marks to Mr. Kumar, R. Subramaniam Kumar, CEO of the bank, and his team. When I joined the board in 2022, the bank was facing a very challenging time. And at least in perception, there was a question around whether it can survive. From survival to stability, from stability to growth, and from growth to this attempted transformation in a space of 3 years. Kudos to the management team that in a space of 3 years, we've come across these 4 bases. I think you're talking about governance. You will see that there have been significant changes in the bank's board. One of the visible features is the number of bankers now on the bank's board. And RBL is a special bank. So far, it didn't have a promoter, so the board has an added responsibility. I think it in so many ways serves as an example of what a balanced board should look like, especially when there isn't a promoter in a bank.
And when we talk about the growth areas and the potential that lies because of this large capital infusion, Gopal, what are the areas the bank could be looking at as an investor? What would you expect?
Again, in a bank, making large shifts and changes is very difficult, right? What first thing this does is, if the transaction goes through, subject to regulatory approvals over a period of time, it will significantly add to the net worth of the bank. There's an infusion of nearly 27,000 crores. The exact numbers are with you in the bank. And that will significantly enhance, if it comes through, that will have a significant impact on the abilities and capabilities of the bank to pursue existing lines of business.
Right.
Yes, it does open up some new vistas, especially given the fact that you have a global partner of standing, the Middle East, India. But, we should not be speculative. We should not fuel speculation right now, at a time when I think so. We need to balance both the realism and optimism.
Right. So, Gopal, RBL Bank has come a long way in its journey and from the investments by the investors like yourself, like Gaja Capital. But to the larger question, my final question to you, as an investor in financial services and banks, what does this particular deal really mean for the whole sector, for the investor community? Because the return parameters as well as also exit parameters for the equity investor and private equity community becomes much more attractive in a banking space which is heavily regulated by the RBI.
This announcement and the earlier deal between SMBC and Yes Bank taken together signal new thinking in the minds of policymakers and regulators. There is much more progressive, much more ambitious. As someone who's been connected with the banking sector for over 20 years, I would say there is sort of a pivot in our thinking, and we're preparing the Indian banking sector towards globalization. So globalization is an opportunity as well as a challenge. The second is the private sector's market share has grown beyond 50%. So even if the public sector and the private sector grow at the same rate, 50% of incremental regulatory capital needs to come from public markets, private equity, strategic investors. So it becomes very important to open up new channels for capital. I think this is a very positive signal, right? These two deals taken together. And the importance of this, I'm sure, will be realized by the investor community in the days to come.
Importance, but also returns and really money making also from their investments in the banking space. And that's why this space is going to see a lot more action. We saw Yes Bank investment in Yes Bank some time back, and there are many also lining up maybe.
But, we should not get ahead of ourselves.
That's
Banks are built over years. And,
yes.
It finally reflects the dynamism in the economy.
That's right.
Yes, strong partners, greater capital enables a bank to do more.
Yes.
But I would really request through your channel, you're such an experienced journalist, to investors that things happen over a period of time.
All right. Thank you so much, Gopal. And we'll probably connect with you again at the time of open offer, because you did not comment on whether or not you're participating in the open offer coming in. But thank you so much for your time, and thanks for speaking to NDTV Profit for the first time after the RBL Bank transaction.